Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Okay, so today we're tackling Get the Guy by Matthew Hussey. You know that dating advice book? The one Eva Longoria is always raving about.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of it.
So we're going to try to really break down his ideas and see if they hold up, yet no cheesy pickup artist stuff. Okay.
Yeah, none of that.
We're going for genuine connection here.
Right, exactly. Like empowering women to be confident and, approach dating authentically.
Yeah, okay, I love that. So one thing that really jumped out at me was Hussey's whole thing about not leaving love to chance. He basically says finding the right guy is a numbers game. Now, I'm not saying we should all become like dating app addicts or anything, but what do you think the takeaway is there?
Well, it's interesting because he's not saying you should be like desperate or anything. It's more about strategically expanding your social circle. Like the more people you meet, the higher the chances of finding someone you click with, right?
So it's not just about quantity, but like quality connections.
Yeah, exactly. It's about putting yourself out there in ways that make sense for you, doing things you enjoy and meeting people who share your interests.
Okay, I can get behind that. So then there's this whole concept of the high-value woman. Hussey says there are 4 key traits: self-confidence, independence, integrity, and femininity.
Ooh, that's a tricky one these days.
Right, like I know that word can rub some people the wrong way.
Yeah, but it's important to understand what he means by it. He's not saying women should be submissive or anything. It's more about recognizing that men and women are different and how those differences can actually make a relationship stronger.
So less about stereotypes, more about understanding the dynamics.
Exactly. For example, he says men have this desire to feel needed, to be the provider and protector. And when women allow men to step into that role, even in small ways, it creates this sense of appreciation and strengthens the bond.
Oh, like that story he tells about the jacket. You should always accept a man's jacket, even if you're not cold.
Yes, exactly. Like it's not about being helpless, but about acknowledging his gesture and letting him feel like he's taking care of you.
Okay, that makes sense. So being a high-value woman is about being confident and independent, but also allowing a man to, feel appreciated for his masculine energy.
Right.
Okay, so all that sounds good in theory, but let's be real. A lot of women are kind of taught to wait for the guy to make the first move. So how does Hussey's approach deal with that?
Well, he completely flips the script. He says that only 1% of men consistently approach women.
Wait, seriously? Only 1%?
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
So are we all just supposed to sit around and wait for that one brave soul?
No, he wants women to be the ones who initiate the interaction.
Okay, I like where this is going, but how do you actually do that without feeling awkward or aggressive?
It's all about subtlety. First, you catch his eye with a glance and a smile, just a little signal that says, hey, I see you.
Okay, that's easy enough.
Then you subtly position yourself closer to him. Maybe you're both at the bar or looking at the same bookshelf,
Creating that opportunity.
Exactly. And then how do you actually break the ice?
You have to be easy for the first 10 seconds of the conversation. Now, this doesn't mean dumbing yourself down or anything. It's about making him feel comfortable showing you're approachable and interested.
Okay, so open body language, warm tone of voice, relaxed demeanor.
Exactly.
But what if you can't think of anything to say?
He has a couple of fun suggestions. You could ask him for a small favor, like to hold your drink while you grab your friend. Or you could playfully test him with a question, like, what kind of drink do you think I should get, or something?
I like that. It's playful and it starts a conversation.
Right.
And you can kind of get a sense of his personality.
Exactly. It's all about subtly guiding the interaction.
Speaking of subtly guiding things, what about seeding the date?
Ah, yes. One of my favorite concepts from the book.
So instead of directly asking him out, you kind of plant the seed by mentioning something you'd like to do, like that new tapas place everyone's talking about.
Exactly. And if he's interested, he'll pick up on it and suggest going together. It feels so much more natural than just blurting out, hey, want to go on a date?
Right. It takes the pressure off.
Okay, so we've talked about being proactive and seeding the date. Now let's talk about some of those classic dating myths. And I think the biggest one Hussey tackles is playing hard to get.
Ugh, yes. He absolutely hates that one.
He says it attracts the wrong kind of guy.
It does. It creates this whole dynamic based on games and manipulation, which is the opposite of what we want.
And honestly, it's exhausting.
It is. He says attracting a quality man requires authenticity and vulnerability.
Not pretending to be someone you're not.
Right.
I'll admit I've definitely been guilty of playing hard to get in the past, but I think you're right. It probably did more harm than good.
It's a common trap, but I think his perspective is so refreshing.
Yeah, it's about knowing your worth and not feeling like you have to play games.
Exactly.
Okay, so another myth he debunks is waiting a certain number of dates before having sex.
Yes, he's all about prioritizing emotional connection over arbitrary rules.
He has this great quote, "Don't focus on getting the guy, focus on getting to know the guy."
I love that. So if that connection leads to intimacy sooner rather than later, that's fine, as long as it feels right for both people.
But what about those guys who are only looking for one thing?
He talks about that too, like if a guy tries to booty call you, you can redirect the situation by suggesting breakfast instead.
Ooh, I like that. It sets a boundary, but it doesn't shut down intimacy entirely.
Right.
Okay, but what about ghosting? We've all been there, and it's so frustrating. What does Hussey say about that?
He offers a different perspective. He says it's often not about playing hard to get or anything like that. Sometimes it just comes down to incompatibility.
So it's not always a personal rejection.
Right. And honestly, that's okay. It's better to know sooner rather than later. He also lists reasons like being too nice, too boring, too aggressive, or even too desperate.
So it all comes back to being a high-value woman. Confident, independent, knowing what you want. Okay, so this leads us to the next section. Keeping him hooked. Or as Hussey calls it, being the woman of his dreams. But before we get into that, I think it's important to say that this isn't about losing yourself or changing who you are to please a man.
Oh, absolutely not. It's about finding that balance between maintaining your independence and allowing your partner to feel needed and appreciated.
Right, not about being a Stepford wife or anything. So what are some of the key things Hussey suggests?
He talks about making your partner feel desired, special needed, and supported. These are all things that contribute to a healthy and fulfilling relationship.
For both people.
Yes, of course.
He also talks about shared values in a long-term relationship, specifically growth and teamwork. What does he mean by that?
It's not just about shared hobbies or interests. It's about having a similar approach to life, supporting each other's development, and working together to overcome challenges. Think about your own relationships. Do you see those values at play?
That's a great question for our listeners to think about. I know I'm definitely seeing things a bit differently after reading this book.
Me too. It really does make you think.
So we've talked about like being proactive and seeding the date and all that, but what other things from the book really stood out to you?
I think one thing that really resonated with me was his emphasis on clear communication. He talks about how women often drop hints or expect men to read their minds, and that just leads to misunderstandings and frustration.
Oh my gosh, yes. I am so guilty of that. Sometimes I'm like, if he really cared, he would just know.
We've all been there.
Totally.
But Hussey's like, no, be direct. Articulate your needs and desires in a way that's respectful but firm.
No more beating around the bush.
Exactly. And it's not about being demanding or controlling or anything. It's about expressing yourself honestly and openly. And on the flip side, he also emphasizes active listening. Not just waiting for your turn to speak, but really trying to understand your partner's perspective.
Creating that space for open and honest dialogue.
Right.
Where both people feel heard and understood.
Exactly. And that kind of communication is so important for building trust and intimacy.
In any relationship, really, not just romantic ones.
Absolutely.
You know, it's funny because a lot of relationship advice focuses on the beginning stages of dating. But Hussey actually spends a lot of time talking about how to maintain a long-term relationship.
Yeah, he does.
What are some of his thoughts on that?
One thing that I thought was really interesting was his advice on keeping the spark alive. He talks about continuing to date your partner even after you've been together for years.
It's so easy to just fall into a routine, you know, and take each other for granted.
Totally. Especially when life gets busy.
Yeah.
But he reminds us that it's those little gestures, those moments of connection that really keep a relationship going, whether it's planning a special date night, trying a new activity together, or just surprising each other with little acts of kindness.
It's about making an effort.
Right.
And I think it's also important to remember that relationships take work, even the really good ones. There will be ups and downs, challenges and triumphs.
Yeah, for sure.
It's about navigating those moments together.
Exactly. And Hussey emphasizes the importance of having your partner's back, celebrating their successes, supporting them through tough times.
Being a team.
Right, like we talked about earlier.
And when you have that foundation of teamwork and mutual respect, You can build a love that's strong and resilient and fulfilling.
Absolutely.
One thing I really appreciate about Hussey's approach is that he doesn't sugarcoat things. He acknowledges that dating and relationships can be messy and complicated.
Yeah, he keeps it real.
He doesn't shy away from the tough stuff, but he also offers practical advice and a sense of hope.
Yeah, he reminds us that we all deserve to find love and happiness.
And that by understanding ourselves and the opposite sex better, we can increase our chances of actually finding that special someone.
He encourages us to embrace the journey, even with all its bumps and detours.
Because sometimes we get so focused on the destination that we forget to enjoy the ride.
Exactly.
Speaking of which, we've kind of wandered a bit from our discussion of get the guy, but I think all of these insights connect back to his core message.
For sure.
It's not about tricks or manipulation or anything like that. It's about becoming the most confident and authentic version of yourself.
And attracting a partner who appreciates you for who you truly are.
Someone who challenges you to grow, supports your dreams, and adds to your happiness.
I think that's a beautiful message to leave our listeners with.
Yeah, it really is a beautiful message.
And this journey of self-discovery, it's ongoing.
It's not like you reach high-value woman status and then you're done.
Right. It's not a destination. It's like an evolution.
Exactly.
It's a constant process of learning and growing and becoming the best version of yourself.
And I think that's what makes it so exciting. It's not about reaching some perfect ideal. It's about embracing the journey with all its ups and downs.
Yeah, and trusting that you'll end up exactly where you're meant to be.
We've talked a lot about attracting a partner, but I think one of the most important things Hussey emphasizes is taking responsibility for your own happiness.
Oh, he's very clear about that. Your happiness shouldn't depend on someone else.
It's about finding that joy and fulfillment within yourself first.
Right, and then sharing that joy with a partner. It's about knowing that you're whole and complete on your own. And a partner is there to complement you, not complete you.
He also talks about choosing partners who add to your happiness, not detract from it.
Yeah, it's about recognizing red flags and setting boundaries, and having the courage to walk away from relationships that aren't serving you anymore.
I think that can be one of the hardest things to do, especially if you've invested a lot of time and energy in a relationship.
Well, absolutely. But it's so important. Sometimes holding on just does more damage than letting go.
Hussey tells the story about a woman who broke off her engagement because her fiancé refused to go to therapy with her.
Oh, wow.
It was a really powerful example of setting boundaries and prioritizing your own needs.
It really was. And in the end, she realized she deserved to be with someone who was equally committed to growth and healing.
Exactly. So if you're feeling stuck in your dating life or in a relationship that's not bringing you joy, remember you have the power to change things.
You have the power to choose happiness.
You have the power to create the love life you deserve.
And that's what we hope you take away from this deep dive into Get the Guy.
It's not just about finding a partner. It's about becoming the best version of yourself and living a life that's full of purpose and passion. And yeah, maybe even a little romance along the way.
To all our amazing listeners out there, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep believing in love.
And who knows, maybe you'll be the one confidently approaching him at that next party. Until next time, keep diving deep.